What the heck is hair porosity and why should I care? Hey guys, I'm back with another video, and today I am talking all about hair porosity, because knowing this aspect of your hair can really help you determine which products will work well for you, which styling techniques will work well for you, and which application methods will really work well for you. And it is something that can be very, very tricky to understand and get right. Now, there are many ways to determine your hair's porosity, but there's only a few ways that I think are actually reliable. First off, let me explain what hair porosity is. Hair porosity is how porous your hair is. So your hair is made up of basically an outer shell or cuticle and the inner part of your hair, which is the cortex. Now, this outer shell called the cuticle protects the cortex. When the cortex has a lot of water in it and is well hydrated, your hair tends to be more healthy. When the cortex dries out because the cuticle is either super damaged or your hair just happens to be very porous, you're going to have some more struggles with hydration. The cuticle is the part of the hair that determines your hair's porosity. Basically, how many holes there are in the cuticle of your hair that allow water to enter your hair and to escape from your hair. So first off, let's imagine a pine cone. And I'm getting this information from the Curly Girl Handbook. Lorraine does an absolutely fabulous job of explaining this issue in the Curly Girl Handbook. But basically, very, very high porosity hair is like a pine cone that is wide open. So the cuticle is slightly lifted. Water can get into the hair very, very easily, and the water can also evaporate out of the hair very, very easily. Medium porosity hair is a pine cone that is more closed but not completely shut. So water can enter and exit the hair fairly easily. It's still not super difficult to get your hair saturated with water. And low porosity is a pine cone that is completely shut tight. Low porosity hair can be some of the most difficult hair to hydrate because that cuticle is so tightly bound down to the hair that it will not allow water to enter. But once you've got water in it, it doesn't want the water to leave either. So there you go. Now, there are a lot of tests out there on the internet that tell you how to determine your hair's porosity. The first one coming up being the cup test. So what you do is you take a very clean strand of hair and you drop it on the surface of a cup of water and you watch it. The cup test says that if your hair sits on top of the water forever and never ever sinks, that you have low porosity hair. This makes sense because if that pine cone hair cuticle is really shut down tight, the water's not going to be able to get into the hair and therefore allow the hair to sink. The cup test also states that if your hair sits on the top of the water for a while but then slowly starts to sink down to the bottom, that your hair is medium porosity. And finally, it says that if your hair is high porosity, as soon as you put your hair on top of the water, it's going to sit there for maybe half a second and then start sinking down into the water because your hair already absorbed the water because that cuticle is wide open, allowing all the water in. This test, however, sadly, is not super accurate, and here's why. It is incredibly difficult to get a completely perfectly clean strand of hair to do this test with. The hair also does need to be 100% bone dry. I don't know about you, but I'm at least putting conditioner on my hair before I let it finish drying. And if there is some conditioner on your hair, that will affect the outcome of the test because conditioner loves water. So as soon as you put it on top of the water, it's going to soak up the water and make it look like your hair has higher porosity than it may actually be. Also, if your hair sits on top of the water forever and a day, you may have had just some residual gel sitting on that hair follicle, because gel is kind of occlusive. It locks in moisture, which is great, but it would also keep your hair from sinking. This is where I got so messed up by using the cup test. Early on in my curly girl journey, I had this really long, blonde, bleached, damaged hair, and I grew out my roots as far as I could, and then I chopped my hair off. And when I chopped all my hair off, I thought, okay, now I have not damaged hair. It's gotta be low porosity. And I did this cup test. I put that hair on top of the water in a cup and I watched it. Heck, I even walked away for like hours and then came back, and that piece of hair was still sitting on top of the water. I don't know if my hair didn't break the surface tension of the water and therefore didn't sink down, or if there was some residual product on my hair that was affecting the outcome of the test, but that hair test told me I had very, very, very low porosity hair. I have since discovered that I don't necessarily have low porosity hair. What really opened up my eyes to what hair porosity I have was the Curly Ninja, and I will link her video down below where she shows 3 different porosity hair types. Other things that you can use to determine your hair's porosity are: how long does it take to get wet? How long does it take to dry? Turns out that for me, I also thought I had low porosity hair because my hair took forever to dry, or so I thought. Turns out that dry time can feel sort of relative. What feels like a really long time to me may not actually be so long when compared to you, but if I'm only looking at myself and I go, oh, it's been 4 hours, my hair isn't dry, it's because my hair is low porosity. That's not necessarily the case. Factors that affect dry time can include humidity and dew points. If the dew points are really high and the air is really humid, it's going to take longer for your hair to dry than if you are in incredibly low dew points and the air is incredibly dry. Your hair will dry a whole lot faster in dry dew points and dry humidity. So that's basically kind of why I'm not a giant fan of the cup test to determine porosity. The thing that really helped me begin to determine my porosity was watching the Curly Ninja's video. I realized that a bigger determining factor for porosity is how long it takes you to get your hair wet. Again, this is kind of relative, because if you're only comparing how long it takes to get hair wet to yourself, you're not going to have a very good basis of comparison. So seeing the Curly Ninja's video, because she's a hairstylist, she touches lots of heads of hair, she has a better frame of reference to determine porosity. So she shows herself wetting down a client's hair, and I tell you what, this client's hair was repelling the water. There was no product on the client's hair, but she was like going to begin the shampooing process, and she put some water on her client's hair and it like repelled it. The water beat it up and ran off the hair, and she like, as soon as she turned off the water, the client's hair almost looked dry again because it hadn't absorbed any of the water. It took her a solid 5 minutes of wetting down the hair in order to get the hair wet. Then she showed another client that was medium porosity, and it took some work to get the hair wet, but it wasn't an absurd amount of work. And then she showed a high porosity client, and that high porosity client's hair really reacted similarly to my hair. So for the longest time, I thought that because my hair was virgin hair, I had chopped off all the damage, and I was treating it really, really well, that my hair was low porosity. In fact, you can go back on my channel and watch some of the videos. In the very beginning, I'm talking like my hair is low porosity because it's not damaged, it takes a while to get wet. It was all relative until I saw the Curly Ninja's video, and that just made my mind go, boom, okay, I understand. Another test for porosity is the mist test, and that is where you get a Flairosol bottle and you mist your hair and you get those little beads of water on your hair. The final straw for me for determining what my hair's porosity was the slide test. Now at this point, I was still operating from the viewpoint that my hair was low porosity. And the slide test, you take your hair and you slide your fingers up the hair shaft. Now, I'm trying to become a fancy YouTuber and I have a mic now. I'm no longer just filming on my phone, so I want to see if this microphone can pick up this sound. My hair squeaks as I run my fingers up the hair shaft, and that is because my fingers are catching the cuticle of those raised pine cone bits as I run my finger up. Now, I thought, okay, that just means that all hair squeaks a little bit because I have low porosity because my hair isn't damaged. And I went to go visit my sister. Now, as y'all have seen on my channel, me styling my sister's hair, it's completely different from mine. So when I went to visit her, after I've been studying all this porosity stuff, I grabbed a strand of her hair and I ran my finger up it, expecting to feel that slight bit of resistance and hear a squeak. There was none. As I ran my fingers up her hair, my fingers just shot up her hair and it was perfectly silent. It felt just as smooth running my fingers up as it did running my fingers down her hair. And I went, huh, hold on a second. I don't have low porosity hair. She has lower porosity hair than I do. And then the next time I washed and styled her hair, I noticed that same phenomenon of trying to get her hair wet and her hair almost repelling the water as I tried to wet her hair. I had to keep adding more and more and more water to her hair in order for it to become wet, in order to wash and condition it. There are many, many, many great articles on naturallycurly.com all about porosity and product tips for people who have high porosity hair, for medium porosity hair, and for low porosity hair. I am not necessarily going to be going into that here because then this video would be super, super, super long. Low porosity hair with that cuticle being so tightly shut tends to be the healthiest hair. While being incredibly hard to hydrate, it's also not damaged in any way because that cuticle is tightly shut. When the cuticle gets damaged, it becomes slightly raised and it kind of stands on end and opens up. So things that can damage the cuticle would be things like heat, would be chemical straightening, chemical curling, as in a perm, some hair dyes, and most certainly bleach. All those things definitely raise that cuticle up and cause the hair to become higher porosity. Now, that being said, not all high porosity hair is damaged. And that is something that took me the longest time to understand because I believed that since my hair wasn't damaged, it couldn't be high porosity. That only damaged hair was high porosity, and that's not the case. You can have high porosity hair that is healthy, as shown here, because I truly believe that my hair is higher porosity than it is lower porosity. So if you have been left feeling super confused about what your hair's porosity is, there is a way to determine 100% for sure what your hair's porosity is. You can do a hair analysis test. Now, these are fairly pricey tests, but you've got to understand that this is taking place in a laboratory setting. They are actually looking at your hair underneath a high-powered microscope. So if you are truly confused, there is an actual scientific way to have your hair looked at under a microscope, and you can be told how fine or coarse it is, how high or low porosity it is, and some labs will even give you product recommendations for your specific hair type. So there is a way to know for 100% certain what your hair is. I personally have not had one of these hair analysis done yet. I would love to. I just haven't gotten there yet. After doing the squeak test on my hair and my sister's hair, I've been able to determine that my hair is much finer than theirs. It's also much higher porosity, and that gave me more perspective to know what my hair's porosity was. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please subscribe and hit the bell. I have more videos coming, and if this video was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed hanging out with y'all today, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye!